Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the video. I'm GetGoodGuy, and today we're looking at a weapon that was a favourite of mine when Battlefield 1 first released. Back when I'd never played Battlefield before and had so much to learn, that weapon is the Selbstlader M1916 for the medic class. The reason we're looking at it today is to ask, is it objectively the worst medic rifle in the game? Because something I can't get away from is comments about it being statistically bad. I asked recently what the worst medic rifle was for a video, and although the Selbstlader M1916 didn't receive the most votes, that honour actually fell to the Selbstlader 1906, I did receive multiple comments that made the point of the M1916 being objectively, statistically, or genuinely the worst. And this is an interesting concept for me. One, because it's a weapon I used to like but I've fallen away from, perhaps a subconscious realisation that there are better options. Two, because the medic class is so stacked with great weapons that it's feasible for even the so-called worst option to still be pretty damn effective. And three, because recording for this video saw me pick up an average KD of 3.34 with a score per minute of 4,300, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that the weapon was holding me back. So we're going to look at this today from both statistical and empirical evidence standpoints. The stats will be from something.com and the empirical evidence will be my own opinion based on experience. But I won't be going super hard on the stats today because, as you may have noticed, I provided background footage of all three variants: the factory, the optical, and the marksman. And there's also a ton of other medic rifles that could be used as comparison. So I'll be making more general statements and observations today so as not to make this entirely too convoluted by comparing the stats of three distinct variants against a sheer mountain of other medic rifles. So let's jump into this with damage. The Selbst 1916 has a max damage of 40 and a minimum damage of 35. This keeps things nice and consistent as you'll always drop a full health enemy with 3 shots to the chest regardless of range. It's nice to have this in your head as you're using the weapon, but it's also an early stumbling block, at least in my opinion. Let's take the RSC as a comparison example. The RSC has a max damage of 53 and a minimum of 38. This allows the RSC to two-shot people out to 70 meters. Sure, it has a rate of fire which is 45 rounds per minute slower than the Selbst 1916, but it still means you only need to hit 2 shots in most situations. For those of you who don't quite see the benefit of that, requiring less shots for certain engagements can be huge. You can take your time more with those 2 shots, knowing you'll drop the enemy if you connect. It also allows for better peek shooting, i.e. ducking in and out of cover to take your shots, which also allows you to be harder to hit. So 2 peeks beats 3 peeks every time. Plus, I tend to find that the Selbst 1916 really requires you to pace your shots at range anyway, otherwise the rounds just don't seem to reliably connect. So a slower, more powerful option, such as the RSC, can really shine where mid to long range engagements are concerned. Plus, 2 taps at close range with the RSC can be equally devastating. That being said, you can spam your shots at close range with the Selbst 1916 and receive decent results, far more so than if you spam at mid to long range. And you'll almost need to do this at close range due to the rate of fire being less than spectacular on the Selbst 1916. Sure, it beats the RSC, but it's still only 224 rounds per minute. Compare that with the Selbst 1906, which has a rate of fire of 299 rounds per minute, whilst having the same damage figures, i.e. it just kills faster. The counter argument being that the 1906 only has 5 rounds per reload, and this is a very strong point. This is a main reason why the gun isn't very popular and won't fit some playstyles. It certainly doesn't fit mine, as I like to really get involved and play in a versatile manner, so I would pick the model 1916 over the 1906, but that doesn't necessarily make the M1916 an objectively better weapon, it just makes it less specialized. What I'm getting at is that the M1916 is somewhat a jack of all trades. If we look at a range of stats, say muzzle velocity, deploy time, reload, etc., nothing is overly terrible, but nothing's particularly fantastic, it's just solid enough, and you can look at that 2 ways. The full phrase I'm referencing here is jack of all trades, master of none. Sometimes a jack of all trades is good enough that we focus on the initial part of the phrase, that being jack of all trades itself. But other times the jack of all trades fails to shine to the extent that the relevant part of the phrase is master of none, and unfortunately that's where I'm landing on this one today. I started recording this video all ready to defend my old friend the Selbstlader M1916, but using it now, after experiencing so many other things in the game, it just feels lacking. The nostalgia is gone, and instead I'm left with a weapon with a less than great kill time, less than great recoil, less than great spread, and no overall strength when it comes to actually contesting a gunfight. Some of you may be staring at the screen right now urging me to finally mention the huge magazine. So yes, it can utilize 26 rounds per reload. This goes a long way on a semi-automatic weapon that fires at 224 rounds per minute. It's nice to not have to think about your ammo potentially running low during a gunfight. It's also nice that you can take on multiple enemies without reloading. But at this point, I also have to admit that I see this as less of a strength than I used to. It's the defining feature of the Selbst 1916, but when your defining feature is ammo capacity, it's maybe just a bit sad. It's infrequent that a magazine that size actually comes in clutch, and I'd much rather have a weapon that actively helped me to succeed rather than passively. So overall, the Selbstlader M1916 does feel like it hits hard, it can be effective, it does have loads of ammo, and it is a decent option for certain situations, but it's just not good enough for any one thing in my opinion, and having loads of ammo only takes it so far. The time to kill at close quarters is so fast now in this game that the Selbst is a real burden there, and it just isn't strong enough at mid to long range when you compare it against so many other options. Essentially, it's one of those weapons that's put into the game to be decent. It can be used by everyone. There's no exceptional skill floor or skill ceiling to it, and it does what it's supposed to do. But other weapons, some of them requiring more skill, can help you to achieve so much more. Is it objectively the worst? In terms of stats, there's certainly an argument for it, as it just doesn't excel in enough areas and has weaknesses and key ones that relate to time to kill. But it's also not that hard to use, and as ever, the most important factor is what works for the individual. So some people may play some of their best stuff with this weapon, so to them, it won't be the worst. Personally, I'd much rather use the RSC for range fights as a medic, and I'd pick an autoloading or a Farquhar over the Selbst 1916 every single time for more run and gun versatile play. It just doesn't have a defined role for me anymore. If I had to pick a Selbst 1916 variant, I'd go for the factory, because the lesser spread decrease on the other two variants made it feel like I had to pace my shots very slowly a lot of the time. I really felt slowed down using the optical and the marksman. So what do you think? Do you like the Selbstlader M1916? And what's your medic option of choice? Let me know in the comment section below. Now let's go over to the board of awesome for the epic people who allow you to get content from me full time by supporting the channel on Patreon. Without Patreon support, I just couldn't make this much content because I would need to go and get another job. So thank you so much to everybody on here. If you want to join them on the board of awesome, the link to the Patreon page is in the description and in my pinned comment. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you don't want to miss future videos, turn on notifications with the bell button and select to always be notified on the options tab that should then pop up, and then feel free to like, share and subscribe. I'm GetGoodGuy, and I'll see you next time. Laters.